Nirnay IAS by officers for future officers.
Have you ever wondered why is India so diverse physically? Be it the snow-capped mountains of Himalayas in the north, the fertile plains, or for that matter, the ancient plateaus, the sun-scorched desert, the coastal plains, and the majestic islands, all in one country, India has such diverse physical features. Well, it is a reason. The reason is attributed to the geological nature of our country. If you see, any country's geology will shape the physical features. The rock system, which will undermine the structure, the geological processes, the endogenic and the exogenic processes, nothing but something like plate tectonics, have helped in shaping the diverse physical features of our country. Based on all these things, India's physical features are divided into the northern mountains of Himalayas, the plains of central North India, the ancient Peninsular Plateau and hill ranges, and coastal plains, islands, and some people even recognize the Thar Desert as a separate one. Now let us understand all these physical features in this video. Let us start with the north, the mighty Himalayas, stretching for almost around 2,400 kilometers from west to east. If you see the origin of the Himalayas, it is quite a fascinating story. Well, the India which we know millions of years ago is not part of where it is now. It was part of an ancient land called as Gondwana. It got separated. The Gondwana land got separated into many blocks. The Indian part started moving north because of a force called as plate tectonics. As it started moving north, you can see it collided with the Eurasian plate, which led to the majestic Himalayas. So I can say that these Himalayas are a product of fold mountains. What are they? They are nothing but fold mountains. And these fold mountains did not occur at one go, rather they are occurred in multiple phases. This is the reason why we have variety of Himalayan ranges, be it the Karakoram range in the north, or for that matter, that is what we call it as Trans-Himalayas. The wall-like structure is called as the Greater Himalayas, as you represented in this one continuous brown color from here to here. These are the Greater Himalayas. And down south of the Greater Himalayas, we have the Lesser Himalayas and the Shivaliks. These four parallel mountain ranges is what constitutes the Himalayas. Now let us understand all these Himalayan ranges. If you see the Trans-Himalayas, these are north of the Greater Himalayas. You can see these are the Greater Himalayas, and north of them is what we can find the Trans-Himalayas, represented in the shape of, represented in Jaskar range, Ladakh range, Kailash range, as well as the Karakoram range. Remember, the northernmost range of India happens to be the Karakoram, where you find the highest point of India, K2. K2, 8,611 meters height, is located in India, though it is part of Pakistan occupied Kashmir. Right? And these Trans-Himalayas stretch around 1,000 kilometers in east-west direction, which tells about its vastness. And these Trans-Himalayas, their average elevation is around 3,000 meters height above mean sea level, which is a high altitude region. One important thing to note here is you do find the Siachen Glacier in this here. Moving forward, next we have a Greater Himalayas, which are one continuous chain of mountains stretching from the west towards the east. These are like a one wall-like structure with an elevation of almost 6,100 meters height. Right? You can see that these are a product of the marine sediments of the Tethys Sea, which have been uplifted. Right? And one unique thing about the Greater Himalayas is this vast wall-like structure has some edges at the end, which we call it as syntaxial bends. These syntaxial bends are represented by Namcha Barwa in the north, in the west rather. Sorry, this is the east. Namcha Barwa in the east and Nanga Parbat in the west. Nanga Parbat in the west. Moving forward, these kind of because of this high altitude, it has variety of glaciers, be it the glaciers of Gangotri, Yamunotri, which are feeding the rivers of Ganga and Yamuna. Then we'll move to the next hill ranges of Himalayas, that is the lesser Himalayas. Between the Shivaliks in the south and the greater Himalayas in the north, we have the lesser Himalayas. Have you ever been to various hill resorts like Shimla, Mussoorie, Raniket, Nainital, Darjeeling and all? These hill stations are located in this hill range. Please understand, this point will help you in determining the altitude of this region. If you see here, these hill resorts are a product of the altitude of these hill ranges, which is around 3,500 to 4,500 meters, which is exactly apt for us, right? The Shivaliks, which we'll discuss further, has an altitude of just around 1,000 meters, which is not sufficient for temperature to be reducing. That is the reason why hill stations are located here. And in general, all the Himalayas, all the Himalayan ranges have steep southern slopes and gentle northern slopes. You can see steep southern slopes and gentle northern slopes. Because of this, they are covered with vegetation in the south, that is towards India, and there usually less vegetation towards the Chinese side, right? Moving forward, after the Pir Panjal, these lesser Himalayas or the middle Himalayas are represented by multiple names across the country. As you can see in this map, the Pir Panjal range in the Jammu and Kashmir region, the Dhauladhar Ranger of Himachal Pradesh, you can see in the map as well. Then you find the Mussoorie or the Nagatibba range in Uttarakhand and the Mahabharat range in Nepal, all along parallel to the greater mountains of northern. Right. Moving forward, the last range, which is what we call it as the outer Himalayas. Outer Himalayas. These outer Himalayas are known by multiple hill ranges, be it the Jammu Hills in Jammu region, the Dafla Abor Mishmi Hills in Arunachal Pradesh in the northeast, and Churiya Ghat and Dhang range in other parts of our subcontinent. If you see these Shivaliks, they are known for a wonderful feature called as dunes. What are dunes? These are nothing but accumulated sediments. What are they? These are nothing but accumulated sediments. You know that all these four mountain ranges are not formed at one go. They are occurred in multiple phases. After the lesser Himalayas, the river started moving from the Himalayas into the plains. Then the topography is not yet complete in terms of its development. The evolution or the formation of the last range of Shivaliks has obstructed the flow of the rivers, which has led to accumulation of all these sediments. As you can see the dunes, the gravels, which are coming up from the Himalayan rivers, and they are obstructed by the formation of the Shivaliks. These are what we call it as the present Dehradun Kotli Dune. These are very, very fertile, which can be used for our agriculture. Here is a fun fact. How do you know that Dehradun is a flat land in the majestic Himalayas? It is because of these sediments, right? Moving forward, these hill ranges which we have discussed so far are very important for our questions in the prelims exam, which is represented by this question. You can see they can straight away ask like a map and ask you to identify the northernmost hill ranges. We all have discussed that the northernmost hill range is what we call it as Karakoram. If you have known this point, you would have got the options of B and C, and then we have discussed that The Ladakh, Karakoram and Jaskar are part of the Trans-Himalayas as we have discussed, and then the Pir Panjal is what is the Lesser Himalayas. With that, we can say that the answer is B, right? So, these hill ranges are a very crucial aspect in the exam and you can all understand by proper mapping. Then, how are these Himalayas very significant to us? They are not just a great barrier acting as a major defense corridor, right, segregating the Chinese side and India, but they're also a climatic barrier. They're also a cultural barrier. The Himalayas, they act as a barrier from the major wind systems comes from the Siberian region, which we call it as Siberian air mass. They protect India from the Siberian air mass entering into India. Also, they also block the monsoonal winds, which leads to tremendous amount of rainfall in the foothills of the Himalayas. And these Himalayas are known for the source of majestic rivers and for that matter, the wonderful grasslands which are found at the high altitude, which we call it as alpine meadows. These are nothing but the temperate grasslands. What are they? Temperate grasslands. They are located at a height of almost around 3000 to 4000 meters height. And these are the places where we go for tourism, for skiing and all those things. I think you all know these places, Gulmarg, Pahalgam, which are in news because of the terror attack. I think these are the temperate grasslands which we go. These are very, very crucial, be it in terms of tourism or for that matter, the water resources of Himalayas. Water resources. So these are what we call it as alpine meadows. Moving forward, the Himalayas, we also have their extensions in the northeast, which we call it as the eastern hills or the Purvachal ranges. As you can see in this map, these are Mishmi hills are the Shivaliks, whereas on the west, on the east rather, along with the boundary with the Myanmar, you can see Patkai Boom, Naga hills, Mizo hills, Manipur hills, all are located which are acting as a boundary between India and Myanmar. It is very simple. If you remember the Patkai Boom, it would be easier for us to remember other things like Naga, Manipur hills and Mizo hills with respect to their states. These are what we call it as the eastern Himalayas. Remember, the Garo Kashi Jayantiya which you have seen here, they are part of the peninsular India, which you will understand further in the video. Right? And when compared with the elevations of the greater Himalayas and the lesser Himalayas, these eastern Himalayas are having just an altitude of around 1500 meters, almost similar to Shivalik hill ranges. Moving forward, until now, we have discussed the hill ranges from west to east, right? Rather, until now, we have discussed the hill ranges from north to south. Now, let us understand the hill ranges from west to east. These are divided by the rivers. Say the mountains or the Himalayas which are between the Indus and the Sutlej river are what we call it as the Punjab Himalayas or the Kashmir Himalayas. And then between the Sutlej river and the Kali river is what we call it as the Kumaon Himalayas represented in Uttarakhand. And after that, between Kali and Tista river is what is the Nepal Himalayas. And between the Tista river and the Brahmaputra is what we call it as the Assam Himalayas, which are divided from west to east. This is about the Himalayas. So now we will study about the northern plains of India. After the formation of the Himalayas, along the foothills of the Himalayas, we have a depression. We can see these are the Himalayan ranges. And after that, there was a depression which was created along with the formation of the Himalayas, which later on got filled with the rivers coming from the Himalayas, is what we call it as the northern plains. By the way, these are the youngest physiographic unit of India. Right. So you can see here they are surrounded by Shivalik hills, the outer Himalayas, right? Then the desert on the western side and the Peninsular Plateau and the Purvachal hills on the south and the eastern side respectively, right? So these are the northern plains. These are represented by various hill ranges, these are represented by various plains, be it the Punjab plains of Satluj Yamuna, or for that matter the Ganga plains, which are represented into upper Ganga plains, middle Ganga plains and the lower Ganga plains, and also the Assam plains or the Brahmaputra plains. See, as you have told you that the formation of northern Himalayas is closely associated with the formation of northern plains. That is what I have told you. There was a depression which got filled with sediments of river. This is what you can remember. Moving forward, these northern plains are divided from north to south in terms of the Bhabar zone, the Terai zone, as well as the Bhangar and the Khaddar. As you can see this picture is sufficient to help you in understanding all these four divisions. For example, the Bhabar zone, which is nothing but the zone of boulders. You can see here, this is a zone of boulders. These boulders are a product of all the sediments which have been dumped up by the rivers as they enter from the mountains into the plains. Theoretically, this is what we will call it as concept called as alluvial fans. And this zone is a zone of around 8 to 10 kilometers from the Himalayas, where sometimes the rivers disappear. That means the rivers are flowing underneath the boulders. After this boulder zone, we have the Terai belt. The Terai belt is a marshy region where you can see that this region receives good amount of rainfall from the Himalayan areas, as well as the rivers reappear here, which it makes it as a wetland, and this runs parallel to it. And this Terai region is very much wider in the eastern parts of the greater plains, right? Then one thing about this Terai plains is it was covered with significant forests represented by national parks like Kaziranga in the Assam part, as well as the Jim Corbett National Park in Uttarakhand. Along with that, because of the demand for agriculture, this region has been converted into agriculture land significantly across the country. That is the Terai region. After that, we have two important things, the Bhangar and the Khaddar. These are nothing but, as the river is moving here, as you can see here, the old plain of the river is what we call it as Bhangar, which are represented by calcareous deposits called as Kankar. This is what we can call it as old alluvium. And the newer alluvial plain is what we call it as Khaddar, where the river gets frequently flooded. This is about the regional division of northern plains. Then how are these northern plains very important to us? You all know that these are the centers of agriculture of our country, where we are feeding our country, mighty Ganga plains. That is the reason why these are the centers of civilizations. You can see Indus civilization is what we call it as, right? Ganga civilization. They have a significant history. Here is a fun fact. In the movie Kalki, even they also show the civilization along the Ganga valley. That tells about rivers are the cradle of civilizations. And because these are the centers of resources, they have significant amount of population. As you can see, UP is one of the populous region of the country. Along with this, these northern plains, they are also very important for our tourism because of the cultural points of places like Kashi, or for that matter, even Badrinath. Along with these kind of significances, these northern plains are very important even for tourism, having cultural points like Varanasi. Moving forward, we'll go to the Peninsular Plateau. Now, northern plains we have discussed, these are the youngest physiographic unit, whereas the Peninsular Plateau, these are the oldest unit of physiography in our country. Some of the rocks here, they are older than the dinosaurs, right? So this peninsular India is like a triangle shaped, extending from the Aravalli ranges in the north towards the Western Ghats and the Eastern Ghats in the east, and then the Meghalaya plateau here, and then the other plateaus. They are almost like a shape like an irregular triangle, right? So the Peninsular Plateau is a base of both the hill ranges, as you can see here, as well as many of the plateaus. The average elevation is just around 600 to 900 meters. By the way, this peninsular India is a highly stable block. The stability is such that we hardly find earthquakes. Very, very few earthquakes are reported in this part of the country, right? And this highly stable block is part of the Archean era, the old era rocks of gneiss and schist, which are metamorphic rock. Metamorphic rock. In fact, peninsular India is what we call it as the base rock complex of India, formed out of granitic gneiss and schist rock. Let us move forward. If you see this peninsular India, it is a product of many plateaus, be it the Malwa Plateau in the north to northwest, the Bundelkhand Plateau, which is known for mass migration of the people, right? The Baghelkhand Plateau, the Chota Nagpur Plateau, which is a very, very important mineral resource rich region of our country, and its extension, which we call it as Shillong Plateau in the northeast. Remember, though this is located in the northeast, it is part of the peninsular India in terms of its formation. We'll understand its formation in the later part of the video. And these kind of plateaus are also, we are having the Deccan Plateau, represented by Karnataka Plateau, Telangana Plateau and all. So I can say that peninsular India has many, many plateaus. Remember the location of these plateaus as represented in this map. It is very important for our mapping. If you see the uniqueness here, the Meghalaya Plateau is the one which extends east from the Rajmahal Hills towards to form the Meghalaya or the Shillong Plateau. I'll explain this. So back in the formation, when this block was there, if this is the Chota Nagpur Plateau, represented by its edge called as Rajmahal, and then we have the Gharo Kashi Jayantiya Hills. What happened was, because of various processes, there was a depression which occurred here, because of which they got separated, and later on these are filled with the sediments of the river. And because this depression separates the Rajmahal Hills here and the Gharo Hills here, this is what we call it as Gharo Rajmahal Gap. Gharo Rajmahal Gap or Malda Gap. You see the fascination here? It is the geological processes which has shaped our various diverse physical topography. Right. And this Meghalaya Plateau is represented by three major hill ranges, starting from the west, the Gharo Hills, then the Kashi Hills, and then the Jayantiya Hills. This is the hill range which is part of the major area called as Mausinram and Chirapunji, the wettest spots of the world. Moving forward, this peninsular India is also having a variety of diverse hill ranges. You can see almost in the west we have the Aravalis extending from the Gujarat to Rajasthan, then into Haryana and the National Capital Territory of Delhi. The highest point is Guru Shikhar, 1722 meters. Remember, these are the old fold mountains of our country, ancient fold mountains. After that, in the central parts, we have two hill ranges called as Vindhyas and Satpura. These are what we call it as the block mountains. Block mountains. Along these block mountains, we have seen that a river called as Narmada flows towards the west. So Narmada is what we call it as Rift Valley. And on the edges of our west coast, we have the Western Ghats, which are acting as a major boundary of the major boundary, which is represented in the form of monsoonal winds. That is the reason why all the west coastal areas, Karnataka, Kerala and all, they get decent amount of rainfall. These winds enter into India via various gaps here, which we call it as Palghat and the Borghat, which is where you will find Pune is connected with Mumbai, and the Thalghat just above it, which is connecting Mumbai with Nashik. Along with these minor gaps, nothing but a mountain pass, you can see the wind systems enter into India and cover the entire country. So these passes are very important in terms of climate, in terms of cultural division, or for that matter, even the flow of the waters drainage divide. On the eastern side, we also have the Eastern Ghats, which are not like a continuous chain like Western Ghats. They are having multiple hill ranges represented like Nallamalla Hills, Palakonda Hill Ranges, Javadi Hills and Shevaroy Hill Ranges. Remember, Western Ghats and Eastern Ghats meet at a place called as Nilgiri Hills. South of the Nilgiri Hills, we also have the extensions of the Western Ghats, which is what we call it as Cardamom Hills, Palani Hills, and even Anemala Hills. That is where you will find the highest point of entire peninsular India, Anemudi Peak. Anemudi is the highest point of peninsular India with a height of 2695 meters. Remember the altitude? We have seen Shivalik's altitude is around 600 to 1500 meters, whereas the Anemudi is around 2695 meters. Moving forward, you can see that these mappings are very important for our exam. As you can see this question where they asked around matching the pairs question asked here. You can see the Cardamom Hills, which is located just now, is part of a coastline which is not Coromandel, but for that matter, which we can call it as the Malabar coast, which we will discuss further. The Kaimur Hills, you can see in the central part of India, they are located at the central part, but the Konkan coast is once again on the western part of our country. So this is also wrong. And you can see Mahadeva Hills is part of the central India and Mikir Hills are part of the northeastern India. The answer is 3 and 4. I would say that this question indicates that we need to superimpose the hill ranges along with the other physical features and try to understand so that we have a comprehensive mapping of our country represented in the maps which will be shown later on. Then, how are these peninsular plateaus and hill ranges are very important for us? One major aspect, they are very important in terms of the mineral resources. Say like the Chota Nagpur Plateau is having tremendous amount of iron resources. Remember the steel plants like Bhilai, steel plants like Tata's, Tisco, Tata Iron and Steel Company, all these are located here, or for that matter even the coal resources. So this is very much rich in iron, coal, manganese and all, which is an important mineral belt of our country. And on the west, you have seen the black soil region, which is nothing but the Deccan Plateau, where you will find the cotton cultivation. And because of these plateaus and hill ranges, it has tremendous potential in terms of hydropower, which we are using for our power generation. And because of this altitude itself, they also form numerous waterfalls and there are wonderful dams. Remember the Jog Falls on the Sharavati River, the Dudhsagar waterfalls in Goa, which is on the river called as Mandovi. And because these is having significant amount of forest resources, they also yield valuable timber like teak wood, sal and all these things. Remember the movie Pushpa? You have along the Seshachalam Hills, which is part of the Eastern Ghats, where you will find the red sanders. So that's ways we can say that this region is a treasure trove of mineral resources as well as even the forest resources. Moving forward, we also have the wonderful majestic desert on our western part, which we call it as the Thar Desert, the Great Indian Desert. This desert is formed because of lack of rainfall attributed to variety of climatic factors. This is the part of the northwest part of the Aravalli Hills. We have the Aravalli Hills here. You can see these are the Aravallis. West of the Aravalli Hills is what you find the Indian Thar Desert. That's what. And this region, we can call it as Marusthali region. Understand? Physiographically, this might be part of the plains, but we are calling it a separate desert because of its unique climatological significance, represented by various things, as you can see, like the shaped by variety of things like mushroom rocks, the sand dunes, the barchans, which we call it as, and also having occasional water bodies called as oases, right? Please understand, these kind of landforms, they look like the nature is acting as a sculpture. That is the beauty of nature. Moving forward, we'll now understand about the coastal plains. Along the vast coastline of India, which is around almost scattering to around 7,516 kilometers, where the mainland comprises of around 6,100 kilometers, we have variety of coastal plains extending from the Rann of Kutch in the west to Kanyakumari and from Kanyakumari to Sundarbans in the east. They are divided into the west coastal plains as well as the east coastal plains. The west coastal plains are represented by the Kutch coast, the Rann of Kutch, the Kathiawar coast, the Konkan coast, part of Maharashtra and Goa, and south of Goa you can see the Kannada coast, and then after the Kannada coast you find the Malabar coast along the Kerala region. You can see that the western coast is part of a very much rugged topography. That is the reason why these are known for wonderful, what I would say is natural harbors. Natural harbors. You can see this because this is a part of a coastline of submergence. Do you remember the point called as Dwaraka? It indicates that Dwaraka, ancient city, lies in the sea, right, on the seabed. So this indicates that this portion of land here got submerged. Because of this submergence, you have seen the land got formed here. That's why it is called of coastline of submergence. That is the reason why you have so much amount of rugged topography, wonderful hill ranges and all, which makes it a natural paradise. I still have a wonderful wish list where I wanted to travel on a bike all the way from the Malabar coastline towards the Konkan coast, where I can see the majestic beaches on the west of the Arabian west along the Arabian Sea. I can see wonderful hill ranges. I can see natural waterfalls, whatnot, right? So that is the beauty of Western Ghats and associated west coastal plains. And along the east, you can see that you do find the east coastal plains, which are represented by the Utkal coast in the north, Odisha region, the northern Sirkars or the Andhra coast together, which you can call it as, and the Coromandel coast along with Tamil Nadu. These are slightly wider than the west coastal plains. Almost these are around 120 kilometers wider, whereas the west coastal plains are just around 60 to 80 kilometers. Imagine the width. Within 60 kilometers, you can move from the mountains towards the beaches. Now you discuss about the wonderful topography, landscapes. That is the beauty of west coastal plains. Remember, also the Kerala is also blessed with the wonderful waterfall, the wonderful regions of what we can call it as the. Here is a fun fact. The Kerala coast is having wonderful backwaters, which we call this locally as khayals, which are represented in the lakes like Vembanad Lake and all. So here also another beautiful tourism hotspot in our country. That's why we call Kerala as God's own country. This is about the coastal plains, and these coastal plains, which stretch for all the way from the west to the east, they are very, very important, be it in terms of our agriculture, because they comprise of wonderful soils of alluvial and deltas. They are agriculturally very, very favorable, and they are also having wonderful ports on the west and the east. Moving forward, let us now discuss about the islands. You know what? India is not just about the mainland. Just like how we have found vast diversity across the mainland of India, we also find such similar diversity even along the islands. Let us understand the two major island groups. The one is the Andaman Nicobar in the Bay of Bengal, as well as Lakshadweep in the Arabian Sea. Let us now understand about the Andaman Nicobar Islands. If you see this Andaman Nicobar, they are not just one major group. There are two groups called as Andaman and Nicobar right? The together Andaman and Nicobar are separated from Myanmar almost right at the top. You can see Coco Channel separating with Myanmar, and right at the bottom you can see the Great Channel separating with the Sumatra island of Indonesia, right? And these two island groups are separated by 10-degree channel, which is nothing but 10-degree latitude. If you see the Andaman Nicobar, they are divided into North Andaman, where you have a wonderful mountain peak. The highest point of Andaman Nicobar is called as Saddle Peak, with a height of around 737 meters. Then you'll find the Middle Andaman and the South Andaman. Just to the east of this South Andamans, you find some islands like Neil Island or Shahid Dweep, Havelock Island or the Swaraj Dweep Island, which are very important white sand beach resorts of our country. White sand beach resorts. Another important aspect of Andaman Nicobar is you have the only active volcano of the entire country called as Barren Island volcano. Also, we find the island of Sentinel Island, which hosts the primitive tribal group of Sentinels. Down in the south, you can see that the Duncan Passage separates the South Andaman from the Little Andaman, and the capital, Port Blair, is located in South Andaman. Now let us come discuss the Nicobar group, where you will find the Great Nicobar, which is the most important group here, where you will find the southernmost point of India. Southernmost point, the Indira point at 6 degree 45 degree latitude. This is about the Andaman Nicobar. Moving forward, we can see that the Lakshadweep Islands, they are very different from in terms of structure and all from Andaman. These Lakshadweep are of coral origin, whereas the Andaman, they are nothing but extensions of the Himalayan hill ranges. In fact, Andamans are nothing but submerged peaks of the mountains. Peaks of mountains. So they can say they are closely associated with Himalayan ranges. Whereas the Lakshadweep Islands are very, very tiny, coral origin, where they are formed by fringing reefs. They are known for very, very low elevation, just around 5 meters. They are not rising above 5 meters. That's why they are highly vulnerable to the sea level. You don't find any hills here, or for that matter streams or valleys. They are so tiny, as you can see this picture. They are so tiny where the island ends here. And the beauty is they are having the majestic beaches, which we are trying to promote right now with proper connectivity as well as infrastructure facilities for the tourists. Right. Moving forward, these kind of Andaman Nicobar Islands, they have wonderful islands called as you can see the Minico Island, which is separating from the main Lakshadweep groups, right? And then the Minico Island is separating from the Maldives. You can see the 8-degree channel separates the Maldives from the Minico Island, and the 9-degree channel separates the Minicoy from the main island groups, be it like Kavaratti and all. Remember one thing, these islands are of coral origin, which is a very, very majestic biodiversity. So that is about the island groups of India, which are not just culturally unique, but they are also important naval bases, geostrategic significance in the modern world. This is about the diverse topography of our country. One thing for you guys, you need to understand, these hill ranges, the questions would be majorly coming up from the concepts which we have discussed in the video, as well as the mapping which is represented in this thing. This is about the physical features of our country.